Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. We try to find surprising facts, maybe a little humor, keep you hooked. Today, we're plunging into, well, a truly wild journey. We're exploring animal behavior in a way that reveals some really fundamental truths about evolution, and maybe surprisingly about ourselves, too. We're going to look at two groups of herbivores that seem pretty similar on the surface. Camelids, think llamas, alpacas, and cervids, deer and elk. What we're about to uncover is how just one single fundamental difference in how they reproduce cascades into wildly distinct mating systems, social structures, and maybe most fascinatingly, how our own actions, human actions, can accidentally turn seemingly tame animals into, well, quite dangerous threats.
That's right. And for this deep dive, we've drawn from a pretty comprehensive comparative analysis. It looks at their breeding biology, their ethology, and also these human-induced behavioral syndromes.
Yeah.
There's really rich exploration of how biology fundamentally dictates behavior. So our mission here is to pull out the most important nuggets, the key insights from these sources, helping you understand not just what these big differences are, but why they matter. What do they reveal about animal nature and, importantly, our often complex interactions with it?
Okay, let's really dig into this then. Our sources point to this massive evolutionary split between Camelidae and Cervidae. We're talking, what, 40 to 50 million years ago? Way back, early Eocene.
Yeah, a huge amount of time.
Yeah.
And this ancient divergence basically sent these two groups down incredibly different paths for, well, procreation, how they make more of themselves.
Right, and what's cool, or maybe ironic, is they actually share this one big feature: foregut fermentation. They both digest food up front.
Exactly. It's a classic case of parallel evolution, you know? Two separate lineages hitting on a similar solution for digestion.
But beyond that digestion similarity, the distinctions get pretty stark, pretty fast.
They really do. I mean, anatomically, they're built quite differently. Camelids, they have those unique padded feet. Tylopoda means padded foot. It's a modified digitigrade stance, almost like walking on cushions.
And cervids?
Cervids, they're ruminantia. They got the cloven hooves we all recognize. And other things, too. Male camelids don't have horns or antlers, which are, characteristic for most male cervids.
Okay.
Their stomachs differ, too. Camelids have a three-compartment stomach, makes them really resistant to bloat. Cervids. Four compartments, much more susceptible. Little things, too, like camelids have elliptical red blood cells, higher baseline blood glucose. It all adds up.
That's quite a list of differences already.
Yeah.
But where does it get to the absolute core of their life cycles, their reproduction?
Right, because even the way the fetus develops is different. The placenta in camelids is diffuse, non-invasive. Cervids have that cotyledonary type, those button-like attachments. And maybe most distinctively, the male camelid has this cartilaginous sort of corkscrew-like penis tip. Very unusual. Facilitates direct uterine insemination.
Whoa!
These aren't just random quirks. They're all part of this co-evolved package supporting their specific reproductive strategies. But the absolute biggest difference, the real linchpin, like you said, it comes down to how the female's body decides when to release an egg. Ovulation.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, you're saying. The single physiological difference, ovulation timing, acts like a master switch. It dictates pretty much everything else about their mating lives.
Absolutely. It is the fundamental difference. So camelids are what we call induced ovulators.
Induced, meaning?
Meaning the physical act of copulation itself is the main trigger for the female to ovulate. Specifically, there's a proteinaceous substance in the male's seminal plasma. It's called ovulation-inducing factor, or OIF, which biochemically is actually beta nerve growth factor, NGF. This OIF gets absorbed into the female's systemic circulation during mating. That triggers a luteinizing hormone, or LH surge, and that causes ovulation about 24 to 30 hours later.
Wow, so the mating itself causes the ovulation later on.
Precisely, and this allows for really opportunistic reproduction. Non-pregnant females, they have continuous follicular activity, these waves of potential eggs developing, so they're almost constantly receptive, essentially always ready if a suitable male shows up.
Okay, always ready. Now contrast that with cervids.
Completely different system. Cervids are spontaneous ovulators. Their cycle is internally governed, but it's synchronized by external environmental cues, primarily changing photoperiod, the length of daylight.
Ah, the seasons.
Exactly. This creates that very brief, highly seasonal period of estrus, which we all know as the rut.
Okay, so this difference in ovulation induced versus spontaneous, always ready, versus a short seasonal window, how does that totally change the whole mating game for them?
It dictates the entire social and competitive landscape. Everything flows from that. For camelids, With females basically always potentially receptive, the evolutionary pressure on males favors strategies for long-term stable access.
Okay.
This typically leads to what biologists call resource defense polygyny. A dominant male defends a valuable territory, good grazing, water source that naturally attracts females.
Because the females might be ready anytime.
Right. And because access isn't this fleeting, desperate thing, the intensity of conflict between males is generally lower than what you see in cervids. They still establish dominance, but it's different.
Okay, so that's the camelid strategy. Now, cervids, with that short, intense rut.
It creates an incredibly intense, almost winner-take-all mating market. Everyone's ready at the same time, and the window is short. This intense selective pressure is what drives the evolution of those really costly male displays. Think huge, metabolically expensive antlers.
Right, they have to regrow them every year.
Exactly. And the energetically demanding vocalizations, like an elk's bugle. It's all about advertising fitness in that short window. And it also means females need efficient ways to choose the best male quickly. So you see strategies like females making excursions to check out males, or gathering at leks, these communal display grounds where they can compare multiple males side by side almost instantly.
So the ovulation mechanism really is the key that unlocks their entire social and mating theater, as you put it.
Absolutely. It dictates the whole play.
Let's dive deeper into the camelid world then. With this continuous receptivity and resource defense, how does the actual courtship and mating play out for them? Sounds less frantic than the rut, maybe.
It is less frantic, but very deliberate. It's a direct expression of that induced ovulation strategy. So socially, you typically see that resource defense polygyny structure. One dominant male controls a territory with resources, attracting a stable group of females in their offspring. Other males, they form separate bachelor herds on the periphery. Conflict exists, but dominance is often maintained through things like spitting, specific postures, maybe some body charging, rather than the all-out brawls of the rut.
And the actual mating?
The male pursues the female. If she's receptive, meaning she has a mature follicle ready, she'll signal by cushing. That's lying down on her chest, sternal recumbency.
Right.
And the copulation itself is remarkably prolonged. We're talking 5 minutes, maybe up to 55 minutes, usually around 15 to 25 minutes.
It's a long time.
It is. And throughout this entire period, the male emits this continuous guttural vocalization. It's called orgling.
Orgling.
Orgling. It sounds, unique. And it's not just noise. It's thought to be part of the suite of stimuli, along with that OIF protein in the semen that helps chemically induce ovulation in the female. Remember that special penis tip, the cartilaginous corkscrew one?
Yeah.
That allows for direct uterine insemination. It bypasses the vagina entirely.
Yeah.
And the semen isn't delivered all at once. It's in these pulsatile dribbles throughout that long copulation to maximize the absorption of that crucial ovulation-inducing factor into the female's bloodstream. Every single aspect of this, the duration, the orgling, the semen delivery, the anatomy, it's all functionally adapted to make induced ovulation happen reliably.
Fascinating. And the female side of this?
She's got these continuous overlapping waves of follicle development in her ovaries roughly every 12 to 21 days. But she's only receptive, only willing to cush when one of those follicles reaches a dominant size, about 7 millimeters or more. After a successful mating leads to ovulation and pregnancy, hormonal changes, specifically progesterone, make her non-receptive. And this leads to a really interesting behavior breeders use.
What's that?
It's called the spit-off. A pregnant female will aggressively spit at and reject any approaching male. It's so reliable, it's actually used as a pretty accurate pregnancy check.
Huh. A spit-off test. Okay. And gestation. Birth.
Gestation's long, yeah. Around 335 to 350 days, so almost a year. And interestingly, something like 90% of births happen during daylight hours, usually between 7 a.m. and 3 p.m.
Why then?
It's thought to be a high-altitude adaptation. Helps the newborn, the chalaria, dry off quickly in potentially cold or wet conditions, reducing hypothermia risk. Birth often happens standing up.
And the chalaria.
The chalaria is born with this unique, thin epidermal membrane covering its body. And notably, the mother doesn't lick it clean, unlike deer or cattle. Again, probably helps with rapid drying. The career is also highly precocial. It's up and standing, trying to nurse within about an hour. It's a follower strategy. It stays right with mom.
Okay. And social status within the group, you mentioned dominant males.
Right. In those mixed-sex family groups, the dominant male usually leads. Among the females, there's also a hierarchy influenced by age, size, maybe past experience. Dominance behaviors are varied. Spitting, that orgling sound can be used aggressively too. Neck wrestling, body posturing, sometimes biting, charging, kicking. Subordinate animals, they show avoidance, they retreat.
Okay, so that paints a picture of the camelid world stable groups, prolonged mating, induced ovulation. Now, let's completely flip the script. The cervids. What happens when breeding is this fleeting, seasonal, high-stakes event?
It's a dramatic contrast, absolutely. And
Okay.
it's all driven by that seasonal, spontaneous ovulation. The whole process kicks off with decreasing daylight in the autumn. That change in photoperiod triggers this complex hormonal cascade, melatonin, prolactin, testosterone surges in males. This ensures males hit peak condition and aggression just as females enter their brief, synchronized estrus. The timing is critical.
Why so critical?
It's all about the offspring. This timing ensures births happen in the spring or early summer when forage is most abundant and nutritious. That's crucial for fawn survival, especially in northern climates where winter is tough.
Makes sense. So the males are primed, the females are briefly receptive. What does the competition look like?
Intense, really intense. It involves escalating displays. First, the antlers. They're the primary weapons, but also crucial status symbols. Early on, in the pre-rut, you might see sparring relatively low-intensity pushing matches that help establish hierarchies without serious injury.
Okay.
But when evenly matched rivals meet during the peak rut, you get actual fighting, sometimes called the antler rush. This is serious combat, often preceded by intimidation postures, things like the ear drop, the hard look, sidling, where they walk parallel to assess each other.
Oh, antlers are key. What else?
Acoustic and olfactory warfare. Think of the elk bugle, that incredibly powerful sound. It does multiple things. Signals the male's presence and condition, attracts females, helps him keep track of and defend his harem.
And smell.
Oh yeah. Scent marking is huge. Males rub their antlers and faces on trees. They create scrapes on the ground where they urinate. All of this broadcasts the male's presence, his dominance, his physiological state. Basically, I'm here, I'm dominant, I'm ready.
So all these things, the huge antlers, they regrow yearly, the dangerous fights, the constant bugling and scent marking these, must cost the males a ton of energy, right?
Enormous energetic investments,
Yeah.
absolutely. But that's the point. They serve as honest signals, signals that are hard to fake. They essentially tell the females, look, I'm so fit, so genetically superior that I can afford these incredible costs and still be standing here. It helps females make informed choices about mate quality.
And the females aren't just passive bystanders in all this.
Not at all. Females are active participants with really sophisticated strategies to assess males efficiently during that short window. White-tailed deer, for example. Depending on the situation, a female might use a sit-and-wait strategy, reducing her movement in high-density areas to let males find her, or she might engage in excursive behavior.
Excursive behavior.
Yeah, she takes brief journeys away from her usual range. This advertises her receptivity more widely and can incite competition among the males she encounters.
And you mentioned Lex earlier.
Right, fallow deer are a classic example. Males aggregate in these communal display areas, the leks. Females visit the leek, specifically to compare multiple males almost simultaneously. They tend to prefer the most dominant males who secure the central positions on the lake. It's like comparison shopping.
Wow. Very different strategies. And gestation and fawning for cervids.
Gestation is generally shorter than camelids, around 200 to 250 days, depending on the species. For birth, the female seeks isolation. She goes off by herself.
Unlike the camelid giving birth in the group.
Exactly. And the newborn fawn is a classic hider. Think of that spotted coat for camouflage, a natural lack of scent initially, and the instinct to remain absolutely motionless in dense vegetation for weeks. The mother actually stays away from the hiding spot most of the time, only returning briefly to nurse. This minimizes the scent trail leading to the vulnerable fawn, but she's incredibly protective if a threat approaches.
Then their social structure outside the rut.
Often sexually segregated. You'll see bachelor groups of males and matriarchal groups of related females and their young. Then, during the rut, it all shifts as males compete intensely for dominance and access to those female groups. Female hierarchies also exist, usually based on age, size, and maybe maternal experience. Dominance displays involve antler threats, roaring, grunting. Submissive animals show it by lowering their heads, avoiding eye contact, moving away.
Okay, so we have these two incredibly complex, highly evolved systems. Camelids with their induced ovulation, stable groups, prolonged mating. Cervids with spontaneous ovulation, seasonal rut, intense competition, hider fawns. They work perfectly in their natural contexts. But you hinted earlier, sometimes we humans get involved and things go wrong.
Hmm.
This delicate balance gets disrupted. How does that happen?
Yeah, despite all their differences, they share a vulnerability when it comes to early development, specifically through a process called imprinting.
Imprinting, okay?
Imprinting is this critical window, usually shortly after birth, where an animal learns rapidly and often irreversibly who its species is. It's fundamental for knowing who to socialize with, who to mate with later.
So what goes wrong?
Malimprinting. This happens when the process goes awry and the animal imprints on the wrong subject, typically a human caregiver. This usually occurs if a young animal is isolated from its own kind during that critical window and receives intensive human contact instead. Think bottle feeding an orphan fawn or cria without peers.
And the result?
The tragic result is an animal that essentially identifies as human. It sees humans as its own kind, but it struggles to interact appropriately with actual humans or with members of its own species. It's caught in a behavioral no man's land.
Okay, let's break that down. How does this malimprinting manifest differently in our two families? Start with the camelids, the llamas, and alpacas.
Right. In camelids, this specific pathology is known as aberrant behavior syndrome, or ABS. Sometimes it's called Berserk Male Syndrome, or BMS, though it's not limited to males. It is a direct result of that malimprinting. The llama or alpaca literally views the human handler as a fellow camelid, a member of its herd.
And what causes it specifically?
It's caused by excessive human socialization cuddling, treating it like a pet during that critical imprinting period, which can last up to 6 months or so.
Yeah.
Especially if the cria is isolated from other camelids. The bottle feeding itself isn't the root cause, but it's often the vehicle for that excessive, improper socialization.
Okay, so how do the symptoms show up? Is it obvious right away?
No, that's the insidious part. It progresses. Early on, as a cry or juvenile, the animal often seems exceptionally tame or friendly. It shows no natural fear of humans. It constantly seeks human contact, maybe nibbles clothes, nudges for petting.
Which people might misinterpret as affection.
Exactly. It's often misinterpreted as affection or just being cute. But what's really happening is the young camelid is testing social boundaries with the individuals it perceives as its herd mates, the humans. It's practicing normal camelid social interaction, but on the wrong species.
And then
Then, as the animal matures, usually between 1 and 3 years old, these seemingly benign behaviors escalate into genuinely dangerous aggression. Because the camelid sees the human as a conspecific, it starts directing its innate adult behaviors, dominance challenges, territorial defense, even reproductive behaviors towards people.
like what kind of behaviors?
We're talking charging, chest ramming with surprising force, serious biting, spitting feces, leg wrestling, even attempting to mount humans, sometimes while making that orgling sound we talked about earlier.
Wow, that sounds incredibly dangerous.
It is. An adult camelid weighing over 50 kilos can inflict severe injuries doing this. And while it's most pronounced and dangerous in intact males due to testosterone, it absolutely can occur in gelded males and even females. Female aggression usually manifests more as spitting and extreme unmanageability rather than physical attacks, but it's still a serious issue.
Goodness. So, if an animal develops full-blown ABS, is there anything that can be done? Can it be, like, retrained?
Honestly, the prognosis once that mature aggression kicks in is exceptionally poor. Attempts at treatment, things like behavioral modification, castration after the onset of symptoms, relocating the animal, isolating it, these have very, very high failure rates. The behaviors are so deeply ingrained because they stem from that fundamental misidentification of species during imprinting.
So what usually happens?
Sadly, because of the severe and unpredictable danger these animals pose to humans, euthanasia is often the only responsible and humane outcome. It's tragic, but the safety risk is just too high. This really underscores why prevention is absolutely critical. Crias must be raised by their dams within a herd environment.
And if bottle feeding is absolutely necessary, an orphan situation.
Then human contact has to be kept to an absolute minimum. Handle only as much as necessary for feeding and health checks, and get that criama back with other camelids, even if just adults, as soon as possible. Never, ever treat young camelids like pets. Don't encourage cuddling or excessive physical contact.
It sounds like there's a dilemma with castration, too.
There is. Castrating males very early, before sexual maturity, can reduce the likelihood or severity of ABS. But early castration can lead to delayed closure of long bone growth plates, resulting in overly tall, leggy animals prone to orthopedic problems and arthritis later in life. So it's a difficult balance.
Okay, that's a grim picture for malimprinted camelids. Now, what about cervids, deer, elk? How does tame aggression look different in their world? Is it the same imprinting issue?
It's different. In cervids, what's often called tame aggression usually arises from habituation, not necessarily strict malimprinting like in ABS.
Habituation, meaning they just get used to people.
Exactly. It's a gradual loss of their natural fear of humans. This happens most commonly when fawns are illegally taken from the wild and hand-reared, or perhaps more often, when wild deer are repeatedly fed by people. They start associating humans with food, and eventually they stop perceiving people as a potential threat. They lose that flight response.
But they don't think humans are deer.
Generally, no. A habituated deer still knows it's a deer, and it knows humans aren't deer. It's just lost its fear of them. But here's the problem. It's still a wild animal, with all its wild instincts intact. And because it's lost its fear, it becomes unpredictably dangerous.
When is it most dangerous?
The rut is definitely the most dangerous period. Habituated bucks, pumped full of testosterone, are highly aggressive. Because they don't fear humans, they may perceive people, or even pets or vehicles, as rivals intruding on their territory or competing for mates. And they will direct their normal, species-typical aggression towards these perceived rivals, charging, goring with those sharp antlers, striking and trampling with powerful hooves. These attacks can absolutely be fatal to humans.
Okay, so the rut is bad. Any other times?
Yes, habituated does with fawns can also be very dangerous. A wild doe would normally try to lead a perceived threat away from her hidden fawn, but a habituated doe, having lost her fear, is more likely to stand her ground and aggressively attack any human or pet she perceives as getting too close to her young. And, of course, any habituated deer that's injured, sick, or feels cornered is more likely to fight aggressively rather than attempt to flee because that fear threshold is gone.
This sounds less like a behavioral pathology of the individual animal and more like a public safety problem.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
With habituated deer, it's primarily a public safety issue, not really something you can fix in the individual animal through training. Rehabilitation or relocation of these habituated aggressive deer is generally not considered a viable option. They often have to be euthanized for public safety.
So management focuses on prevention.
Prevention is the cornerstone. That means robust public education campaigns. A fed deer is a dead deer, explaining the dangers of feeding wildlife. It also means strict enforcement of regulations against feeding deer. In areas with overabundant deer populations, management might also involve population control, like managed hunts or targeted culling, to reduce the number of deer interacting with humans. And for wildlife rehabilitators who might have to raise orphan fawns, strict protocols are essential. Minimize human contact, house fawns with other deer whenever possible, use remote feeding systems, all to prevent habituation from occurring in the first place.
Okay, so let's synthesize this. If we look at both these tragic situations, the ABS camelid and the habituated cervid, what's the fundamental difference in the animal's perspective when it becomes aggressive towards humans?
It boils down to how they perceive the human. The ABS camelid, due to malimprinting, genuinely perceives the human as a conspecific, as another llama or alpaca. Therefore, its aggression is social. It's engaging in dominance disputes, territorial challenges, maybe even misplaced reproductive behavior, just as it would with another camelid. And this happens year-round because it sees you as part of its social world.
Okay, it thinks you're one of them.
Right. The habituated cervid, on the other hand, doesn't see the human as another deer.
Yeah.
It has simply recategorized humans from potential predator threat to essentially neutral in its environment. It's lost its fear. So when powerful hormonal triggers kick in like testosterone during the rut or maternal protectiveness and activate its innate aggressive routines, the nearby human, no longer feared, simply becomes a convenient target for that aggression. It's not social competition like the camelid. It's territorial or defensive aggression directed at something that's just there and not scary anymore. And it's primarily seasonal, linked to those hormonal triggers.
Got it. So in both cases, the animal isn't really being mean or vicious in a human sense.
Exactly. In both scenarios, the animal is actually acting perfectly normally according to the behavioral rules of its own species. The deep tragedy is the dangerous misdirection of those normal, innate behaviors onto humans, all because of human interference with their natural development or environment.
That's a really powerful distinction. So stepping back from this whole deep dive, the evolutionary split, the ovulation difference, the mating strategies, these disturbing behavioral syndromes, what really stands out to you?
For me, it's the profound illustration of how tightly biology and behavior are interwoven. That one difference in ovulation cascades through everything. And it really hammers home the implications for both animal welfare and human safety when we disrupt these evolved systems. The psychological cost to these animals, caught in that behavioral no man's land we talked about, unable to relate properly to their own kind, and dangerously incompatible with humans must be significant. It's just such a powerful reminder that our management, whether it's livestock like llamas or interactions with wild deer, absolutely has to be grounded in a deep understanding of their innate ethology, their natural behavior. We ignore it at their peril and ours.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about how these interactions, bottle feeding, leaving food out, things that might seem minor or even kind, can so profoundly warp an animal's fundamental understanding of its own species, leading to such dangerous outcomes, it definitely raises a bigger question, doesn't it? If these relatively obvious interactions can cause such problems, what other, maybe less obvious ways might we be unknowingly disrupting the intricate natural world around us? It certainly gives you something to chew on.